will be continuing playing a 1-2 no limit cash game session. I could just check here, that way if an ace came he'd be unlikely to put it on me, put me on an ace. But I'm going to go ahead and raise. Some of the times I'd just check here, some of the time I'd raise. I picked up an open-ended straight draw, and there's also a decent chance that my ace high is probably the best hand right now anyway. So if he checks me, I'm going to bet $10. That's a good card because now I pick up a flush draw. So I'm going to just check, try to hit the straight or the flush. And it didn't, but there's a possibility I saw the best hand. If he had a draw, then I probably do. Yeah, I probably have the best hand, but I'm not going to make a value bet with it. Just check it down. I'm guessing that he had hearts, or maybe he just had a 7. Let's look. Right, that's 7. So I raised pre-flop, and at this point, this guy probably should have just given up on the hand. He's going to have to be playing it out of position, and it's not a very good hand. And there's just not really any value in defending the small blind there, you know. There's very little money in the pot. It's better to just give it up than to put yourself in a situation where you have marginal hand and you're going to be playing out of position. Call on the flop. Probably would have actually liked to have seen maybe a check raise. You know, I could easily just have overcards there and be making a continuation bet. A check raise would have won the pot for him. Or he could have tried taking a small stab on the river. You know, maybe I'd fold my ace high, probably not on that board, but he could have considered bluffing. All in all, how he played the hand wasn't, I wouldn't say it was bad or anything. The only thing I definitely thought was bad was the pre-flop call. You're just going to get yourself into tricky situations if you're playing marginal hands out of position. I started playing poker about 5 years ago. I like poker. Well, I've always liked games, and I've especially liked competitive games. I like that it's a game. I like that it's a game that encourages deception, you know. In most games, if you're too cutthroat or, you know, if you're trying to win too hard, then, you know, people don't want to play with you because, you know, you're the mean person who's all, you know, pulling out all the stops to win. And, you know, most of the time people don't really like that. But in poker, you're supposed to be like that. And you're supposed to do everything you can to win. So I like that aspect about it. And I like the psychological aspect of poker a lot. I've always felt like I have a good sense of kind of what other people are thinking and what's going on in other people's heads. And I like trying to figure that sort of thing out a lot. To be good at poker, you have to be good at understanding other people and understanding yourself. I'm going to have to play this hand. If this was unsuited, I wouldn't even play it over the gun. It's just not a very good hand to be playing offsuit in early position. But since it's suited, I'll go ahead and play it. And that's a small raise, so I'll have position, so I'll go ahead and call. I'd say that's a pretty good flop for me. It's not one that I want to slow play because there's a lot of potential draws. Most likely this guy doesn't have a draw. Most likely he has something like, you know, queens, and he doesn't like that ace. So most of the time I'm going to bet here and he's going to fold. But it's just such a high texture flop, you know. Even if he has ace king and he's being tricky and slow playing it, I still don't want to slow play, because then if a diamond came, that would kill my action. So I'm not going to slow play it. It's just too dangerous of a board to do that. Okay, so he probably had something like queens or jacks or kings. How much I bet depends a lot on the texture of the board. A hand like that last one where, you know, it was ace 10 4, there's a lot of potential draws that could be out there. There's the diamonds, you know, any sort of 2 Broadway cards has a gut shot straight draw. And even if the person doesn't have the draw, like I said before, if they already have a hand, I don't want the draw to hit and scare them away. So a board like this, I'm going to be betting bigger than I would on a different board. I'm going to be betting, assuming I'm not bluffing, I'm going to be betting at least 2/3 of the pot, maybe even close to the full pot. Whereas another board, let's find one. Oh, in the hand. Definitely just going to check from the big blind. Ace 4 is not a good hand, so I'm not going to raise it up. Let's say I raise, you know, an early position, we'll say of queens, and the flop comes like a jack 7 deuce rainbow. On that board, I'm not going to bet nearly as big because there aren't any draws, and yeah, pretty much for that reason. So I guess whether I had queens or if I had ace king, I'm going to make a smaller bet either way, because I don't have to worry about him calling on a draw if there is no draw out there. And if I'm bluffing, that way I can risk less. And if I have queens and I'm not bluffing, then I'm not going to scare him off if he has like a jack. See, this person limped pre-flop, and I completed in the small blind. And then they bet $4 into a $6 pot on the flop. And I check called it. I probably have the best hand. I'm just going to check call because there aren't really many hands that I can get paid off with that I'm beating. So right now what I'm hoping for is that he had a flush draw and missed and is going to bluff. And he didn't bluff, but I played it right because he couldn't call bet on the river. The best I could hope for is that he'd try to bluff. The limp with king 5 of hearts was not good. I definitely would not recommend playing that hand in early position. Maybe if you're feeling frisky and it's folded to you in late position, you know, there's not really a lot of value in raising, but sometimes you can do it. So I have ace king under the gun, it's good hand, so I'm going to open it up to standard 3 times the big blind raise. Alright, I like that I got action from this guy. This is the guy that played the king 5 suited earlier, so just based on the fact he had limped in with that hand kind of tells me that his calling range is a little bit wider than it probably should be. That's not a great flop. Since I raised in an early position, it makes it more look like I have a big pair. So if I'd raised in late position, I'm not going to try to make a continuation bet on this board against 2 players because they'll be less likely to believe I have something. But since I raised under the gun, it looks more like I could have a big pair. So that's why I tried to make the continuation bet. Clearly didn't work. One of these 2 people definitely has a big hand, so I'm just going to give it up at this point. But like I said, if I had raised in late position and the flop came all low cards and I had 2 opponents, I'd be a lot less likely to make the continuation bet. Okay, so this person made a legitimate call there with the 3s, trying to set mine. And they got lucky and hit that set, and playing my kids made a normal bet out with the aces there. And then got raised, so that keeps going back. I like the guy with the threes. I like his raise. That way he's getting more money if the guy does happen to have an overpair. I think it's usually best to not slow play. Sometimes there's situations where it's good, but more of the time you're going to be getting yourself into trouble if you slow play. And, you know, like on this board, this guy does have aces, so if the pocket threes had decided to slow play, and now this, you know, there's a lot of bad cards that can come and make it so that you don't get paid off if you choose to slow play. You know, another 9 might scare the aces off, thinking that you had just called with the top pair, or, you know, the diamond would scare the guy off. So, and if he has a hand like ace king, ace queen, and you slow play, you're hoping that he hits that ace or king or whatever, and then can give you some more money, but chances are they won't, and if they do, they might be suspicious. So it's usually best to just go ahead and raise right there. Let's go back to that hand, see what happens. So he raised, and what the ace is just called. That's good. Well, I mean, you could stick in a really small re-raise, just try to figure out where you are, but in general, I wouldn't do that. I'd just call. Now the 9 comes. That makes it a little bit easier for this guy to get off his aces, but it's a hard position to be in. This kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about it being really important in cash games to know how your opponents are playing. The stacks are so deep, and you're definitely at some point going to be in a situation where you have to make a difficult laydown like that. You can't always be losing all your money when you have an overpair in a cash game. You have to pay attention to how the other people are playing, and you have to know who you have to make that fold against. And if you haven't been watching how they play, then it's really hard to know. You know, it's not easy to get away from that hand, but if you know your opponents, then you can do it. Not knowing anything about the guy and it being relatively low stakes, it would make it hard, but you definitely have to know how to make those laydowns if you want to be a successful cash game player, because the stacks are just so deep that you can't be in the habit of losing your whole stack when you have an overpair. So yeah, it just all goes back to knowing your opponents, watching how they play, and being able to put them on a range of hands. So the ace is put in a check raise on the turn. I don't like that at all. I mean, this guy could have had a 9. That's just playing too big of a pot with one pair by putting in the check raise there. It should be a big hands here. These people should have, this guy should definitely have a big hand. But let's just see if he does. Let's see, I think this guy raised to 6 over the gun, and this guy on the button made a re-raise to 10, I believe. And this guy re-raised. And they all have big hands like I would have expected. Can't really fault the kings. Jacks probably could have gotten away from it at that point, but I don't think he had that much in front of him. I prefer online cash games to live games because they go so much faster. You know, you can play twice as many hands per hour online as you can live, and then combined with the fact that you can play more than one table at once, you know, you just get to play so many more hands per hour that live, you know, playing one live table in comparison is just really boring and slow. Yeah. Plus, you know, it's a lot easier to play online. You can just roll out of bed and play in your pajamas. Whereas if I want to play live, then I have to like take a shower and drive down to the casinos and then get on a waiting list, and so it's just much easier to play online. I think 10, 20 no limit's the highest I've played. I'm not really one for making big jumps up to stakes I'm not comfortable with. I'm willing to do that in a tournament, you know, once in a while buy into a tournament that is a little bit bigger than I normally buy into, because unless it's near the bubble, it's not going to really affect my play. You know, I've already lost the money if I buy into a tournament, so I'm not really going to play scared. But when you play higher there, you're comfortable with in a cash game, and you know it's real money, then I think it's more likely they're going to like make a mistake or play too scared if you're not comfortable. So yeah, I've never played higher than 10, 20 no limit. Plus, like I said, I usually play the full ring games, and it's hard finding a full ring game higher than 5-10. I actually started playing 10-20 for a little bit, and I wanted to play it a lot more, but there was never any full ring games. This session was a little bit better than the first one. Made $20 or so, and didn't win any big pots, but it's always good to have small wins and avoid the big losses.